We're back. It's a Tuesday. It's Think and Link, and you remember what was the movie with Will Ferrell when he was Elf? I think it was Elf, right? When Santa Claus was coming. Remember that? How excited he was? Right. I know him, right? That's how I felt about this one for the entire month. I'm at that moment, right? I know. No pressure at all.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
So you're talking Elf, not like old school. We're going streaking.
No, not that version. We're not doing that today, but I'm glad that came up. All right, so Think and Link, we have this wonderful speaker series we put on here in the RSP building, and Capsule's offices are upstairs as well. We have 3 sponsors for this. We have RSP. They designed this amazing space, amazing icon of a building in the Twin Cities. Happens to be the former Grain Belt Brewery building, which is interesting because we've got Surly here. And they've done amazing things for Target and a bunch of different clients all over the country, even the world, I should say. So RSP Architects, Lake One, which is a HubSpot marketing firm that we adore. Always reach out to Ryan Rudd, say hi, just, find him on LinkedIn, ping him, connect with him. He's a good dude, right? Anyway, we always bring up Ryan Rudd wherever he can because he never shows up. He's an extreme introvert. He doesn't like to be in these situations. So we like to call him out. Anyway, and then of course, Capsule. We are a special projects firm working in brand marketing and design. Clients of note would be, let's see, Quick Trip, who's actually in the room at this moment, one of which, as well as a number of other brands, including Patagonia, Arc'teryx, Hydro Flask, and a variety of other interesting ones. So,
what are special projects?
They are
marketing guy. I don't know.
Special projects are really interesting, complex projects that usually involve some form of research, design, marketing. Right? You'd imagine them those projects you've looked at and you're like, I don't want to get to that because it's pissing me off. I don't want to touch it. It's over there. It's usually marketing, design, brand related, right? It's those. Yeah. Hopefully that's helpful. So I'm going to hand it over to Kitty. She's going to be the primary question driver. She's going to introduce herself and also then hand it over to Omar and to Andy here to talk about each of their backgrounds. Take it away, Kitty.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kitty Hart. I am with Heroic Productions, and I have the pleasure of coming and co-hosting every once in a while with you. Aaron, thank you to the Capsule team. Super excited about this conversation today. The pairings are always great, and this pairing is really, really great. So very excited to see where this is going to go today. We want to say welcome to Andy Pearson, who is with us on Zoom. Hi, Andy.
Howdy.
Andy is with Liquid Death, and Omar Ansari is here. Omar is the founder of Surly Brewing. We are always excited about hometown brands, first of all. So congratulations. We love to celebrate.
Thank you for the invite.
Yes. So we're going to have a fun conversation here between Andy and Omar. Aaron and I always say we do the least talking. We're just going to tee up some good questions and get these guys going. These are 2 brands who have been very disruptive, bold with their branding, and we're just always fascinated by those stories. We want to hear how, why. How do you know when you are crossing the line? I really want to pose that question to you, Andy. So let's go ahead and get started. Andy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your background and how you came to Liquid Death?
Sure. You're actually catching me on Thursday is my 3 years exactly at Liquid Death, which is kind of fun to reflect on. My background is in creative advertising. I've been in the industry in various agencies, primarily Crispin Porter Bogusky, Deutsch LA. I was briefly running McKinney LA from the creative side of things before I joined Liquid Death almost exactly 3 years ago. And I've kind of crisscrossed with our founder and CEO, Mike, at a bunch of different agencies, and we always kind of saw eye to eye on our suspicion and skepticism around marketing. So I think that comes through in the brand we've created here.
Love that. Omar?
Yeah, hi, I'm Omar Ansari, founder at Surly Brewing, as you said. I'm a hometown guy, grew up in Golden Valley, parent of a child of a couple of immigrants, and that probably speaks to a lot of sort of where my business went, because I call Surly a second generation business startup. So I kind of grew up in the factory up in Brooklyn Center. Has anyone been over there before? Been on this old school tours? Those are pretty good. Those are pretty fun. And did that, got out of college, and then just one day I was a home brewer, and one day kind of the idea popped into my head of maybe I could open a brewery. I was looking through a homebrew catalog, and there was a little brewery, production brewery in there for sale, and just like the light bulb goes off in the cartoon, I thought maybe I could do it. So talked to my wife when she got home, and here we are 21 years later.
And she's still your wife.
Yeah, she's still my wife. Yeah,
This is a good sign. This is a good sign.
It's been a crazy ride over these last, I should say, 20 years on the beer side of things.
Okay, so I'm sure everybody in the room knows about Surly. Before you came here today, raise of hands, how many of you didn't, and it's okay, how many of you didn't know about Liquid Death? Okay, all right, a number. So for how many of you had heard of it before and thought it was something really bad for us? It's okay to raise your hand. So there's a tremendous amount of misunderstanding about this brand. And Andy, we talked about this on our prep call. I want to get right into that topic because you both have infused so much wonderful personality into the brand. The names of all of your beers are awesome. I have Furious, Abrasive, Hell, Darkness, the Axeman. And then there's Liquid Death. And if you see the commercials, if you don't know that it's just water, you think that the world has been turned upside down and what are we doing? So my first question for you, Andy, is how did you and Mike and everyone else at the company know that you were going to be able to make this go? Maybe you didn't, but do you ever wonder if you've gone too far?
No, I mean, I would say I start with the last question. No, I mean, to jump back to the first, I think, the way someone here put it succinctly that I really liked is that Liquid Death is an evil plan to make the world healthier and more sustainable. And I think that's really succinctly puts what we're doing in a really nice way, because the basic premise of Liquid Death was that all and sorry, I know Omar's here, all the best brands, all the most fun brands out there are the ones that are the worst for you, right? And I say this as an avid beer drinker myself, but it's like Bud Light has the coolest, funniest Super Bowl ads, right? Energy drinks sponsor all the action sport athletes. Even in advertising, it's like candy brands have some of the most fun, wild work out there, right? And so the idea was, can we take all of that fun that's infused into brands that, maybe aren't always the best for us, and actually apply it to something as simply healthy as water, and act like it's not even a water. Act in a way that water or just a healthy brand in general has never acted before. And so that's, I think, what you're kind of talking about is it shouldn't feel like a water brand or an iced tea brand at all. It should feel like something that is super compelling, that you want to find out what it is. And then once you are on the flip side of that, you learn about it, the light bulb really goes off and you look at everything that we do in a totally different way. It was funny when I first started, we'd get on calls and people would go, no one is ever going to drink water out of an aluminum can, right? We had to be on calls and had to defend ourselves against people that we were, trying to partner with or something. And then about a year and a half into me being here, we would get on calls and people would go, oh my God, water in a can. It's such an obvious idea. I can't believe I didn't think of that. Right. And so I think, like anything, it at first it feels like a really stupid idea until one day it doesn't feel stupid anymore. And I think that's the kind of beauty of the magic trick that we've been doing is is going hard on this thing that seemingly is totally nonsensical until one day it starts to really make sense to you, whenever that is for you. For some people in the room who've just heard of it, today might be the day that you get and understand it. For other people, it might have been 5 years ago when you first heard about it. But that it makes that kind of relationship to what we're doing that much more intense and personal, I guess, in a really interesting way.
Well, it's funny because Andy, I do drink water.
Oh, good.
So
Okay.
don't feel offended. I mean, I drink it out of like a Yeti.
No.
But don't. Well, no, I just got a couple at home, so I always fill them up with ice. So, no, but I guess an analogy. I told my wife about the idea in January 2004. Kind of the next group of folks I told were, I played ultimate frisbee at the time, and it's where I met my wife. And with that and owning a brewery, I like to tell my parents college wasn't a complete waste of time drinking beer and playing ultimate. But so some of these guys I told on the team, like, hey, I'm thinking about starting a brewery. There was a lot of like, oh, okay, well, that's a great idea. And one of the guys in the team, it was a couple of years later, so probably 2008 after we opened, and we sort of got shot out of a cannon, and it was always trying to hang on to the rocket ride. And I remember Greg, he tells, a couple years later, he's like, seems like a pretty obvious good idea now, Omar. I'm like, yeah, it seemed like it didn't at the time, but yeah, like you kind of hope people come along and you got to have that faith in the product that you have and understand that market that you're in, that when everyone else gets on board, they're like, oh yeah, that is a good idea. Or Andy, you probably aren't familiar with Surly as much as some of the folks here, but we were one of the first craft breweries to put beer in a can. And we're the second one. Kettle House out of Idaho did it. And same thing. People were like, what in the hell are you doing? You don't put good beer in a can. Like, craft beer comes out of a bottle. I mean, that's how, anyone kind of my age of, 90s sort of craft beer, like, good beer came out of a bottle. That's like end of story. The stuff that comes out of a can was not good beer. And same thing of like trying to, convince people that it was a good idea. It was a bit of a struggle. And then luckily, you go into a liquor store now, there's nothing but canned beer, right? Like, there are no bottles anymore. So you never, I guess it's always a little bit of you've got to look back and say like, well, that was obviously the right idea.
And Surly was also one of the first to come out with sort of edgy branding on it as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I'd say for this marketplace, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the unique things about beer is it's pretty local, right? So we weren't the first places to have edgy marketing in the United States, but we were the first ones to have that type of marketing attitude in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, and Wisconsin didn't have it. Iowa didn't have it. The Dakotas didn't have it. So maybe some, on the coasts, there weren't a lot of them out there, but that was a bit of it for me, was that my background of growing up in my family's business, we made industrial supplies. Boring, like, it's a commodity. No one cares what it's called. No one cares. Like there's no design. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just kind of a price, and that's about it. And and how does the product perform? But that's it. There's no soul to the product. There's no anything exciting about it. And that to me was the fun thing about going into the beer business. It's like, man, if you can't have fun doing this, you're probably in the wrong business, because it is all fun. Like, it is all, beer is about people getting together. It is about kind of creating an atmosphere. And that was so to me, it was kind of this easy, like, oh my God, like, we've been stuck in this really boring world for so long. And now all of this is in front of us. Like, for Becca and myself and Todd, our head brewer, when we got going, it was really just stuff that made us laugh was what we went with.
I'm thinking back to when I was first introduced to your brand, and it was hard to come by because it was showing up in tap rooms in certain situations at the University of Minnesota and other places. And you had these names and this personality. And I projected it onto you as a founder. I'm like, this guy must be pissed off at the world, because most of his names are like furious. And there should have been at some point in time an FU, because that's what I thought was coming. You're like, angry with the boring or something. You're like, I am going,
Be angrier?
yeah, I don't know. I like
It's a stupid fucking question.
I didn't even ask the question yet. You seem like such a nice guy.
Well, I mean, it's honestly, it's a little bit of a, you know, I'm a Minnesotan, so I'm, you know, kind of like all Minnesotans. I'm not actually gonna be mad in your face. I'll just
Which was
talk
also
shit about you later. But no, I mean, it's fun because you get to manifest all of that outside as a brand. Like, I'm not a super angry guy. Like, big shock to folks that know me. But you know, one of our main brands is Cynic Ale. So ask Elise. She's here. Like, there's plenty of that at the brewery. You know, there's.
So you're the cynical man.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, to me, it's always been, yeah. I guess, you know, that's kind of what a brand can be, right? Like, is it a 100% reflection of who you are? Like, for me, it's like the reflection of the brand has always been, there's been a humor aspect to it, a tongue in cheekness that's to me is what's been entertaining. Sort of the metal, the Satan stuff's always been maybe a little pushing a little bit far, but I mean, listen, it's great. It's beer. It's the kind of thing you can bring into the fold, and it'd be fun to do.
Yeah, and your beer does hit like a punch in the face sometimes, right?
Is that why you're drinking water?
Well, when you move from
Yes,
water,
I mean, listen, yeah, they're not.
does.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the idea is that they
Yeah.
are somewhat aggressive too. And that is reflected in sort of in the names of the beer and in the designs of the can and such. Yeah.
So in the room, we have a lot of designers, we have a lot of marketers. So I think people would love to hear about the creative process in general. The team at Capsule has done a ton of naming. They have the scars to prove it. You know, I still talk about me as being at Capsule, but you know what I mean. Naming is hard, creating brands is hard. Talk a little bit about that process. What do your teams look like? And how do you create an environment that allows them to be the creative selves that they are?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, we have a really small, tight-knit team. We could fit in a minivan or smaller. People kind of think that we're like this huge internal agency, and it's honestly just it's a couple of us doing stuff that we like doing. I think like I really connect with what Omar's saying in that the brand for us is just kind of a reflection of all the stuff that we think is funny and all the weird cultural references that we grew up in, whether that's old skate stuff or Jackass or George Carlin stand-up or SNL or like bad ads that were on TV late night. It's sort of this like, or design and music. And so it's all mashed up into this bag and shaken up and Liquid Death spills out basically. I don't think you couldn't have a bunch of people sit in a room and design the brand because it's actually just so messy and this amalgamation of all these different things. And so our team is you know, it's me. We've got a guy who was Brendan Kelly, who's actually from Chicago, was in a punk band called the Lawrence Arms that still play around a lot and used to write for The Onion. We've got somebody who had his own show on Adult Swim, and he does a lot of our art and voices stuff for us. And we've got people from, you know, in-house from, you know, that were a metal bassist for Ozzy and for a bunch of other guys back in the day. And we just have a bunch of really weird, interesting people. Not necessarily marketers. I'm probably like the most normal, least tattooed person there, which is, I guess, like,
most normal.
Yeah, dude, when I joined, I was like, I've never been the most boring person in a room before this. When we have like pro snowboarders and like adult film actresses working in the room, it's like, how am I supposed to compete with that? But yeah, for us, the creative process is we liken it a lot to being in a writer's room on a TV show where we just kind of sit down and we kind of just talk out the ideas and really quickly land on stuff. I've kind of gotten on this thing of, I don't really like thinking of Liquid Death as a brand so much as like a character. And because when you have a character and you're in a writer's room and you're writing a show, an episode, you know the character, you know what they're going to do in given situations. or you know when they can surprise you and do something that you didn't expect to see coming. And so for us, when we sit down, it's more of like this question of, in this situation, whether it's with his partner or how we want to talk about sugary sodas or whatever it is, it's more the question of like, what would Liquid Death do in that situation? The same way if you're writing an episode of a show that you work on. And so for us, I find there's a right answer, which I've never heard of in marketing or creative before, where there's one answer that's correct and everything else is wrong. It's normally so subjective. And but I think when we distill it down to this question of what would Liquid Death do, there's a right answer that everyone objectively can point to and be like, that's the thing that Liquid Death would do. And so it takes out some of the subjectivity while also simultaneously letting us work really fast, because we're just trying to answer that question. And so that it's a very different process from, I think, where I was at in agencies and stuff like that, where you have to have a big team of people throwing 1,000 ideas at the wall, and then it gets whittled down and watered down over, days and weeks and months. Ours is like, we'll come up with something in a matter of an hour or two of working, and then we're just like, cool, let's do that.
That sounds very nice.
So
Freeing.
Well, it is. I mean, we want to make a place where it's easy to work and it feels like you have to have that freedom of that environment and not be bogged down by all these processes and all these voices and people. Like we intentionally keep it very streamlined so that it is like a very pleasant experience where all we're trying to do is make each other laugh at the end of the day. Like if we can make the other guys in the room laugh or the other girls in the room laugh, like that's when we know we did it. And that's a pretty good, that's our testing, is how hard do we make someone laugh in the room.
It kind of, oh, we lost you. It kind of feels like the child of Ozzy Osbourne and like Tom Hanks, right? If you're like, put these two things together.
I've never heard it described that way, but it could be.
Does that fit?
Sure.
All right.
Well, it's quite a collab. It's funny because I would say in the early days for Surly, a lot of the naming was myself, and it was a similar sort of story of what made us laugh. We would just, for us, it wasn't always like, let's sit down and name a beer, but let's, it's just being in the conversation about the brand, talking about what we're doing. Hell. German beer style, lager style. And I'm like, hell. I'm like, hell, if the name Hell's not trademarked yet, like we just got to do it. Like it's just done. And that's how the whole brand concept came about, as a cab ride back from the MSP airport. And Darkness was I'm sure some folks here have seen Dave Chappelle in the past and remember Charlie Murphy and him getting slapped in Darkness. And those were the Dave Chappelle days. And talking about that for a beer name, it was just like, oh my God, we got to do that. So it was a similar thing for us back in the day of when I was doing a lot of the naming, was just things that we found funny, things that made us laugh, that it's maybe an inside joke. She was the tradition was built around, we can do whatever the hell we want to do. It doesn't really matter. We're so small. It's all okay. And there's far more constraints now. Like it's not just me in a truck selling a beer to a store and trying to
with age and experience, like it'll bump up against the boundaries. Of course, Andy would say that's fucking never happening, I'm sure, right? As long as he's there, that'll never happen. But I can see where that would, as a brand ages, it matures and it has to mature to the audiences as it gets broader and broader.
One thing about us, and Andy can obviously speak to where that brand is at, and it seems to me Liquid Death is built all about that brand story. And for us, we're in Minnesota, we're a Minnesota brand. And some of those same jokes maybe don't play as well in Hinckley as they do in Minneapolis. Like it's a hard, like as we've tried to grow, me getting the letters of, the handwritten letters about hating God, like they get kind of tired. Like they get like, oh, another one, like, oh God, been really hard as we've grown to have that same sort of energy or anger or about the brand, because we've needed to, it wasn't like the old days where I'm like, I don't care. We were so small when we started canning. It's like, dude, we've got a 30-barrel brewery. Like if we sell a few hundred cases of beer, that's enough. Well, now it's like, well, we need to sell 5,000 cases a day.
Yeah,
it's like there's just far more constraints, and it's just it's a different animal now.
Yeah. And Andy, you got to tell me if you do stuff that in a lot of places would be canceled, right? Or what, is considered cancellation, right? And it hasn't seemed to happen to you. Of course, I haven't read all the comments or looked back on all the history and anybody going after you, but you do stuff that goes so far into a place that you can imagine that would incite some anger and some letters and some interesting conversations internally, but whatever, moving on.
Oh, I mean, we're a brand based on comedy and humor. That's all we're trying to do is, humor to us, just because you can be very funny doesn't mean you have to be mean-spirited. And so I think people in marketing often conflate the two. My wife was on a call. She's a freelance creative director the other day, and she was on a call for a big brand, and they were briefing a brand that's not traditionally funny. And they're like, okay, we're gonna do this campaign is gonna be a humorous campaign, but we want to be funny but not mean. And I don't think there's anybody out there making brand work that's just like aggressively angry, like mean at people. And I think I just think it's a bit of a misconception. I think you can be aggressive without being mean. I think those two things are very different. And so, we have places that we just don't play in. We have specific subject areas like religion that we just do not touch, because we're not here to make anybody feel bad or bad about or good about what they believe. We're just here to make everybody laugh, right? And so the humor itself may feel kind of niche, but you have to kind of be niche to find a truth, to have people laugh at it, right? The basis of humor is truth. You have to have the person telling the joke and the person receiving the joke both looking at the same thing and agreeing to that thing together, right? You can't have that. You can't have humor without truth. So inherently, our stuff is about finding some connection with people and then basing a joke or a concept or something off of that. And so I think as long as we're confident about the stuff that the style that we're doing and the way that we're speaking, and we know what no places that we don't want to go, we feel really confident in what we're doing. I say internally, it's like, be fearless, not reckless. Like we're not out here just, shooting stuff all over the place and being crazy and willy-nilly. We're very considered in the approaches that we take. And then, I mean, to your point about you haven't read all the comments, I think that's also partly what happens is that marketers get really fearful of like somebody saying that they don't like us, which it's like, cool, somebody somewhere didn't like us. Great, 10 somebody somewhere didn't like us, but did 20,000 other people really like us? That feels like an okay percentage. And in the way that I had someone sort of put it, a really nice metaphor to me, it was like, imagine you walk into a soccer stadium or ultimate frisbee stadium for you, Omar. I used to play a lot too, so it's cool. So say you walk into a soccer stadium and there's 30,000 people, they're all cheering for you. And then in the nosebleeds, there's like 10 people that are going, boo, right? And that's what comment sections are often on the internet. And we too often, just as humans, focus on like the negative side of things, that we forget that there's 20,000 other people cheering for us elsewhere. And you would never in a million years in that situation focus on those 10 people, but somehow as marketers, when we look at comment sections and we look at letters we receive, that's what we're doing. And so I think we have to really disengage that part of the way that we look at feedback online.
That's great. We talk a lot about the fact that hate and love are closer together than indifference.
Yep.
Right. So you getting hate and love inside, even if it's 50-50. I mean, obviously you don't want to have 95% hate and 5% love. That wouldn't be good.
We launched, when we did our Super Bowl spot 2 years ago, it was split down the middle. If you looked at Twitter, people like love and hate. And we were like, hell yeah, we 50-50. And
there you go. Perfect.
You know, if I'm being honest, the most disappointing thing is that we put out stuff that everybody likes now. Like we look at stuff sometimes and we expect to get more flack for it, and we don't. And so we're like, I mean, it's still good. We love that people love it, but I'm kind of amazed how little blowback we get from people on things sometimes.
Maybe you have to a little farther. Might be the
Trying.
But I very much a loved brand, and there's a ton of emotion attached to what you've done and in the community, right? We should at least talk a little bit about, starting the brewery, changing the laws here, right? And that disruption in this community is profound.
Yeah.
And
it's being a disruptor's carries a lot of baggage along with it, and for good and for better, for worse. So it's been the brand is, I'm very much connected with the brand, right? I've got the tattoo on my arm. And so, anything critical, it's pretty hard. I'll be honest with you, for me to just turn it off and be like, it's just another one of those folks. But, there's been we've had so many different things over the last 18 years, but I was at a bar today, downtown St. Paul, and, the owner owns some other bars in the city, and they've never poured our beer because they're angry about the taproom bill, about the Surly bill. And that was 2011. So 13 years ago.
They're holding on to that one.
Yeah, you'll find that people in the beer business hold on to things because that's kind of what they can control. If you're a bar owner, you get to control what beers you pour and what beers you don't. So there's an intense amount of people hold on to things for a long time. I mean, some bars won't pour our beer because we did a Thanks Obama beer, which I thought was super funny because it was a Republican meme about Thanks Obama. So I thought it was super smart and funny. Many people didn't get the joke. So Plums will not pour our beer.
Really?
Which is ironic because we've also had a slight issue with the union over the years. So you think those would balance off, but they haven't. So it's been we've had a lot of, there's been a lot. I mean, for us, we've had a lot of, we're always at the tip of the spear. There's not many breweries, when they lose their head brewer, they're in the front page of the paper. So it's great to be, all publicity is good publicity, right? I don't know about that.
The tattoo on your arm. I get it. No, I mean, you live in it and it hurts sometimes. That's.
I mean, it's not a client. But I mean, and that's the decisions to be made. And it just, the beer business, like there's been such a sea change in the beer business, and how, where craft beer fits in the marketplace, and how it's all just kind of moved on and from where it was. And I think where many of us, founders, sort of where we were and what we were sold, it now has just kind of been like, well, that was just a thing. Which I'm like, what? No one gave me the memo. And that's, I mean, things continue to change, right?
Yeah, you're probably taking a leadership position like you did, a really big leadership position. comes with a lot of obligations, and they don't really tell you about those other things afterwards. Like, oh, now you're out in front. You're going to get tagged anytime anything goes bad.
Yeah,
You're
and
first.
I mean, I guess there's got to be a bigger, point to it, which makes it all worthwhile. For us changing that law, the Surly bill that allowed every brewery in the state and breweries that weren't existing yet to sell beer, kind of changed the whole economics of opening a brewery, which meant there were going to be a lot more breweries, so a lot more competition, as my mom reminds me of all the time. But the goal, the whole point of it wasn't to make as much money as we can, was to improve the craft beer scene for Minnesotans as much as we can. That was the point. That's the win.
Very
and
authentic.
I think it's we were very much, myself and Todd thought of as like there's an old picture at Brooklyn Center Brewery, and it's me and Todd and that whole Obama sort of call it there, that piece that got put out of Hope for Craft Beer, which was probably a little bit much, but like we felt like we were doing the things to help move the industry along, and things have certainly changed since then. But the reason we did a lot of things we did was to make the beer scene better in Minnesota, and hopefully it seems to be definitely one of those things that there are a lot of breweries that don't get it. They don't know what it was like, and that's, I guess, part of that. That's I guess the price you pay. Then everyone's going to come up and say thanks, and that's okay, because that's not why we did it. But
Yeah.
the beer scene's better, and that's the goal. What's the goal?
I do love when mom gets involved, though.
What's that?
When mom gets involved.
Oh yeah,
I
Mom
love-
always has a lot of great ideas. Like I said, it's a second generation
I love
business
that.
startup, so she's got a lot of ideas.
So I found a quote, Andy, I found a quote of yours, and
Oh.
I'm going to read it. I would love to have you talk a little bit about it, and I would love your input on this as well. So Andy says, fear is the most motivating emotion in decision and indecision making within our industry. It's why we're all bored with 99% of what is made and what we make ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with that. I said it.
That's a damn good quote.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying before. I think that idea that there's all there, and I think it's just happened more and more where there is, yeah, as you said, like, as you guys said, it's like you guys haven't been canceled yet. It's like that shouldn't be the thing we're concerned about. The thing we should be concerned about is, do people care about us or not? And here's another quote. I always say it's like the worst thing anyone can feel about you is nothing, right? Because that's what we're fighting, is indifference all the time. But a lot of times there's those things don't win out. And for us, we always look at the competition as like, competition isn't other water, it's not other beverages. The competition is the other stuff that's in your feed every day, or that you see pop up in the news, that creator that's making really hilarious content. For us, that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at as competition. So if that is our competition, we have to step up our game and make some of the most, interesting, most hilarious content we can, that serves then as the brand. And I also think I kind of look at the brand. Obviously we have the beverages that we make, we have really great merch that we do, and that's a whole other side of the business. But I actually look at the marketing itself as a product. I think that's like almost the third thing, right? And you can pay for the first, your money, but the last one, there's a lot of different ways to pay for stuff. You can pay for it with a like, with a follow, with time spent on it, with a share. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And so for me, as the head of creative, I have to make sure our product is the best product every single day that we put out in the world. And so when you take that stance, you think of your marketing as an actual product that you wish people would pay for. It's a much different vantage point than I think a lot of other marketers are necessarily looking at it. It's not an extractive kind of relationship. It's a much more additive and respectful relationship that we like to have with people. And so I think that the fear is tough. And then I also think that we've gotten all too good at our jobs. I think we've gotten all too smart. We have too many best practices. We're really good at measuring KPIs and doing postmortems and all that stuff. And I think part of the magic of what we're doing is just trying to get back to, genuinely laugh out loud, funny stuff that will make everybody laugh. I think there's I said it's like there's a big difference between advertising funny and actual funny. And I think a lot of people are striving for advertising funny, which is like, oh, that was really funny for a cracker commercial. As opposed to like, dude, that was so funny, right? But that's the kind of entertainment that as regular people we try to consume. But as marketers, we set the bar so low. And so I think you have to set that high, and a lot of big part of that is kind of letting go of the fear of failure, right? Comedians have to be so okay with failure over and over again. If you want to do comedy, comedians have to get up every single night and do an open mic night to a room of 10 people and hear crickets. And you have to be willing to get up the next night and do the same thing. And so I think we've kind of taken a similar approach where we're just going to keep throwing ourselves at it and learn every time how to be funnier and not be so concerned if something fails, because we just know we're going to do something next time that hopefully really connects.
The stat that we've thrown around that is, what was it? 78% of brands people could live without in their lives. Like if you think about the brands in your life, 78% of them could go away tomorrow and you wouldn't care, which is the indifference number, right?
Right.
And to actually have some loyalty there has to be some emotion, some connection. So I'm like, you're in my life. I've invited you in, and I continue to invite you in as a brand to be a part of my life, and that I'm not going to give you up, right? It's not many achieve that level of loyalty.
No, and that's, for beer, and then additionally, Liquid Death, it's a beverage. It's what you choose to drink. And that was sort of, my whole idea when the brewery got going was, what you choose to drink is a beer. But at that point, it was particularly a beer. Says a lot about who you want to present yourself out to be to the public, right? Like it's sort of what brand you align yourself with tells other people what's important to you. And, I think that was such a key component of things got going for us. And, when going back to the fear aspect of things, I spoke with someone here earlier before we all sat down, and, kind of where they were at with their company of like, well, we don't want to touch that yet. It's a little too risky. We're too big. It's not worth it. We have those same issues of there are now some things that we're like, it's just, we can't do that anymore. Right. And back, way back, and back in the day when we got going, to be like, well, I don't care. There's nothing, there's none of it matters. Like that's kind of what makes the brand interesting. And I think obviously a spot for Liquid Death where, an exciting brand that you can kind of have that as your main ethos, and that's what you can hang your hat on. But yeah, that's a huge part of how we approach some things of, the team brings ideas out there and it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's as things have ratcheted up for us, have gotten bigger. Like I feel like we don't have a lot of opportunities to fail. Like there's just not a lot out there, but I think the takeaway to Elise and her team is they need to go do some stand-up.
Yeah.
Where are we on time? We want to make sure we leave questions for the audience because we know there will be.
We're 42. Holy cow. Okay, so we have one more question from us maybe, and then, or we can go to the audience anytime if you'd like to go to the.
Okay, what's coming for you guys? Is there something that you can talk about brand-wise? Anything new coming that you want to talk about? I always love to know about brand collaborations. Love the brand collab you guys did with Elf Cosmetics, not the movie. And Burton Boards. I just love watching these spots come out. So
we've got some collabs coming up for Darkness Day. That's sort of our big fall event. That's one of the brands that we're really well known for. So we've got some collabs which those collabs always have to come in from a number of angles. So they've got to work with the brewers, because we don't ever tell the brewers they've got to work with someone for a marketing aspect on a collab. It's just fun. We've got one with a band chemists out of Denver, that the drummer is also a brewer at a band, True, in Denver. So we've done one thing with them years ago. So that's kind of a fun one for us. But that's, we really, Elise and I had talked about this earlier, and, as far as the new things going, like it's not the fun stuff. Like, we're so focused on execution and kind of what we need to do in the changing beer business. Like, we do not have a lot of new brands, and sort of that, that's the fun stuff coming, because that's just the nature of where the beer business is right now. But Andy might have a couple more he can speak to. I want to hear about the Burton one.
I can't talk about anything. No, because partly it's like, I think part of the fun of Liquid Death is you never know what we're going to do next. And so we can't unfortunately talk about stuff ahead of time, but we do have plenty of fun stuff coming. I think, interestingly, kind of that point of as a brand matures, we're really focused, like, very much from the top down on maintaining the level of the high level of creative crazy and humor and everything that we're doing. We're just adding a lot of new skills to our skill set, so really expanding into retail in really meaningful ways, working with distributors. I think, like, as we grow as a business, we just sort of are acquiring smarter people and better skill sets into what we're doing, but still focused on there's plenty of big collabs. I'm shooting a thing tomorrow that I'm really excited about, just, I guess, stay tuned for more from us very shortly.
Subscribe to that channel. Hit like, make sure it shows up in your profile. Do you want to do questions? I have one other thought while you go out, and if anybody has any questions. I just talked to someone who came over from 7-Eleven to your team, talked to her today.
Yeah.
And it's the boring part of your business, but 7-Eleven was a big part of your ramp up to success, which is kind of cool. It's a convenience store. It's an alternate channel. I didn't realize that was part of the story. And it's kind of cool to hear that piece of it. Like, you went from Whole Foods to 7-Eleven, right? Which is like, what the hell are you doing there? But it totally makes sense for volume and replacing those other evil drinks. True evil, right?
Right. Those furious drinks.
Yeah. Right.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Bartlett, not to be confused with my new friend Elise Bartlett. So I do marketing research, and so hi, Andy. My question is for you. My first exposure to your brand was that Super Bowl spot 2 years ago. I watched the Super Bowl for the commercials, and I was just blown away by the spot. And so the market researcher in me said, did they test that? Did you guys do any testing on that?
No, I mean, we don't. No, I mean, we don't really do any testing. I mean, the testing we do is putting something live. Like, to be honest, that's the best testing we can do. It is. Right? It's the most honest. It's like, throw it out there and see what the reaction is. We try to do a lot of things quickly and for cheaply. And what that means is we can try out we talk about small bets. We can try out a lot of little things, throw them out there. And if they take off, like the elf thing or whatever, we're like, holy crap, we spent very little money and very little time, and this thing blew up and it's amazing. And if it doesn't go well, we go, well, we didn't spend very much time or very much money on this thing, and it didn't go so hot. So who cares? We have something else in the chamber, right? And so I
think that's really smart.
Yeah, that's what we're doing versus, if you're running these huge integrated campaigns that have to be live for 3 months, 4 months, half a year, there's so much pressure on this creative to perform and be like the absolute best thing. So of course there's all this, of course it's very nerve-wracking, and you want to try to adjust it and change it and make it work. But for us, we take a much more kind of disposable approach, I guess, into the work we do, because we just know that we can bring something else out next week that has a chance of success too, right?
So Andy, you've got a lot of experience working for those bigger, older brands when you were at agencies. Do you think those bigger, older brands can do that kind of stuff? Can they?
I think they
just
could.
outside their realm.
I think they could. Can they? Maybe not, but they could. You know what I mean? I think like it takes people committed to playing it a little bit looser, thinking of it like a character where you're just gonna put stuff out, and I think it's definitely possible.
So
You
the
just
organization maybe kills that.
exactly.
itself,
We're
the
set
culture.
up for that kind of work. We produce everything in-house ourselves. I have a production team. I direct stuff myself now just because it's frankly easier and faster and cheaper to do that. So we just are making stuff constantly, and we've created this flywheel of stuff that we put out. And so I think you have to really have that kind of framework and that commitment to that thing to make it work. But there's no reason why anybody can't do what we're doing in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, love that.
Hey, Andy, my name's Christian. You can't see my face, but here's a tattooed arm right here.
Yeah.
I go to a lot of metal shows in Minneapolis. And so I was aware of Liquid Death before I saw it in Target, my local Target on the shelves. And I'm just wondering, like, Liquid Death, obviously it's very metal. Like visually, you know, it's very raw, and it fits at metal shows as a beverage, as an alternative to Surly. For those who don't partake. But I'm just curious, is that where the brand started, like in the metal community? And how in the world, like similar to Aaron's, you know, being kind of baffled, like 7-Eleven, what's that all about? Like, how do you guys cross over so many different lines, like into the mainstream? You know, I know it's kind of a big question, but.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, look at like the way we think about it is everybody wants healthier choices for their family. Everyone wants more sustainable choices for the planet. Everyone wants to laugh. You know, I think when we get pegged as this like punk water, metal water, obviously that's where, you know, some of our inspiration started with. But look at, I don't know, look at all the culture that comes out of skate culture that makes its way into the mainstream. That space is a real incubator for a lot of pieces of culture that eventually grow up and go mainstream. So I think that was kind of similar for us, where that's what we gravitated towards. And also it's, you know, objectively, it's stupid to sell water with heavy metal. Like it's not the way it's been done. And so it's pretty funny to do that. So it's really based out of, you know, it's in service of making a humorous product ultimately. But then, you know, we get emails from moms who they're like, oh my God, thank you. My high schooler was addicted to energy drinks and now drinks Liquid Death instead. And we get, you know, stories like that all the time from all walks of life. So it's really cool to see a brand, you know, that essentially was ignored by an entire category of all health, all, you know, wellness. That whole thing is speaking to the same grocery shopper that goes to the same grocery store, that listens to the same public radio station or whatever, right? And so for the first time, somebody came along and made a brand for somebody that wasn't necessarily into that. And then we grow from there, and then you kind of, more people get brought into the fold and love us for our Death to Plastic mission, or, you know, the humor we're bringing, or our kind of anti-marketing stance. There's a lot of reasons to love the brand once you look into it. And it doesn't have to just be that we have a metal aesthetic. It's just something that we, you know, it's part of our DNA, but it's not the whole thing.
Yeah, if you were to start with sustainability, it'd be boring as hell. Right?
Right. And anybody can come along and make a canned water company. I mean, we were kind of on the forefront of that. But like some other big giant brand with a red logo comes along and, you know, drops a canned water brand, and we're out of business the next day because we just made it about a canned water, right? So we built something that nobody could replicate or touch. That was really the idea behind Liquid Death in a way.
Yeah, I've had that other water. and it's buy an energy drink, and it sucks. But I'll just say that out loud. You didn't say that. I said that. It's out there. Another question.
I have a question for Andy. I appreciate. Okay, I appreciate your brand character. I work in packaging. You said sustainability. I run a packaging engineering company, so I get super nerdy about watching people react to sustainability claims. And so I think your cans used to say infinitely recyclable. And now I notice they say, they state a fact about how recyclable aluminum is and the percentage in the marketplace. I was curious if you remember that, and if you did that because of people kind of getting after the polyliner inside of cans and infinite, and or if you
No,
have any comments, if you don't remember.
No, I mean, we still say infinitely recyclable. I think we've just been changing our packaging a lot over the years as we work with different retailers and stuff. But no, that's not for any reason. We still, yeah, we have the fact about plastic recycling. So only 5% of plastic actually gets recycled just because it's not kind of economically useful to do that. So yeah, I mean, our whole thing is getting people off single-use plastics and converting them into more sustainable forms.
Okay, I have a question for Andy. And I don't know if it was you or Mike that said something along the lines of it's not agencies that don't produce great work, it's clients that don't want great work, something like that. I'm on the client side and I want great work. What advice would you have to help us clients make sure that we're getting great work and not watering it down?
Yeah.
Unintended.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll say this, because I am now, I guess, technically a client sometimes too. I look back at the stuff that I pitched on the agency side to my former clients, and I'm like, man, that was I had no idea what I was doing. I was way off, or that wasn't a responsible idea. And I think I think we're lucky because we are both client and agency together. I think what has to happen is the agency has to, I know it's always like we're an extension of the clients and we work together in a collaborative team, but until you really are living it day in and day out, you can't kind of see what's right and then also see the opportunities. So I think the part of the I'd love to see all the pomp and circumstance kind of broken down. And like, I always get mad when people send me pitch decks and it's a deck. I'm like, hey, send me a Word doc and we'll talk through ideas in a Word doc. Like, give the designers the night off, let them go home and don't make them build this deck. I think if on both sides we were able to cut loose all the stuff that is not meaningful, we would, and it's not really necessary, we would make it a much more frictionless experience and probably arrive at better work. Don't have meetings on Mondays. You know, like don't have a presentation on Monday and to make sure the agency is not working the weekend. Give people the opportunities to like, both sides have to be treated with respect. And then you get down into having like real, honest, casual conversations where the ideas are going to lead to something way better than a formal presentation. And that's just kind of one example, but I mean, in general, I think we have to work on our relationships with each other and what we spend time doing, because I think there's a lot of wasted energy on both sides of the agency client relationship.
That was good, wasn't it? No, I have no thoughts to add.
We have another question.
Hi, I'm Danielle Silver. I'm a recent graduate and graphic designer, and I'm just so obsessed with your work and portfolio and career. So I know you started off in agencies, McKinley, Humanot, and I loved your grandma's iced tea campaign before, but kind of as you go about the creative process, when do you know how far you could take a campaign before it's kind of reached its limit?
What do you mean by campaign?
Like if you are to expand upon an idea, how far to push it, how long to push it before you go on to something new?
I mean, we never repeat ourselves ever. I mean, very rarely. I think we've put out the greatest hates. We've done 3 volumes of that. So for anyone who doesn't know, we've got a lot of hate comments. So we took all those and we turned them into lyrics for 3 different albums. So the albums are verbatim hate comments that people left on Facebook or Twitter or something. But that's the only thing that I can think of that we've franchised out longer than a single thing. Like I said, I think part of the joy of Liquid Death is like, you don't know what's going to come next. And we intentionally don't want anything we do to feel like the last thing we did, or let alone the last 20 things we did. So we've done stuff where I remember something where we're working on a project and we're like, oh, this is slightly too close to something we did 3 things ago. Let's either kill it or let's totally change the way we're approaching this, because we don't want it to hang together. The thing that hangs everything together is kind of the element of surprise that you're going to see when you open up your phone, you see an email from us and you're like, what is this going to be about? Like that's a really fun thing to feel. Or when you see the Liquid Death, icon in your feed, you're like, here we go. Right. So we're kind of creating this environment where we're not trying to do the same branded thing over and over again. We're building a brand in the most counterintuitive way possible by being totally unbranded or inconsistent in a weird way. But that is the branding, right?
Hi, my name is Reed Holmes. I'm a recovering creative director, 30 years at an ad agency, various ones actually. Just wrote a book, but just trying to purge a lot of shit. Anyway, Andy, I'm a big fan of your work and of the brand. And Mike, I have a question for you, and I also have a question for Omar. So equal time, I guess. Andy, it sounds like you guys don't even work from briefs. You guys just sit down and go, what's going to be funny today? And I just wonder if you could comment on that. And then Omar, I really love what you've built with Surly. I mean, it really is a beacon of hope for, small businesses in Minnesota and kind of plowing the road for a lot of the rebirth or birth, I guess, of craft brewing in Minnesota. And the attitude you bring to it is so fresh and much appreciated. And my question to you is what's the next 5-10 years look like? Is there big expansion? Is there world domination? Are you going to stay a local brew? Are you going to think about bigger things? So
I'll hop onto that one. Thank you for the question. It's the craft beer business has really pulled back for the most part. Does not mean that there are not brands that aren't successful. But I would assume many Minnesota breweries are down probably 20 to 50% from where they were pre-pandemic. So I think most of us are all looking for a new way forward because people simply don't drink as much beer as they used to, because they're drinking stuff like Liquid Death all the damn time. There's funny ads.
Worst.
But there's just go into a Whole Foods, or we don't have alcohol here in our Whole Foods, but so many places, there's so many drinks available, right, that just did not exist when we started. So part of our challenge is I resisted that for years. Like, we were only a brewery. A lot of other breweries got into a lot of other beverages early on, and I was like, nope, we brew beer and that's it, to the detriment really of the company, because we've had to pivot and start making other beverages now. So that's probably our near-term future. I'd love to tell you that world domination was coming, but that's just not the reality of the marketplace. Yes, it is. And there's a little bit of, I think, for a lot of us in the industry of kind of waiting to see. Beer always is never going away, that's for sure. And I think all of us feel like there's, there will be another wave coming here, but it's a bit of a retrenchment to be like, all right, where are things at? Because we need to sort of batten down the hatches, because it's just that's a bit of a challenge. So that's the answer to that. So that'd be good. We could do this again in 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
And see what Andy's up to and the answer to his question.
Yes.
Yeah. Along briefs. I mean, we've written a couple briefs, I think, for ourselves. But even in the brief writing process, well, to answer your question, generally, no. It's like, hey, we have this thing. What are we going to do? But again, it's like, what would Liquid Death do? And so we're kind of approaching it from a standpoint of what's the entertaining take on the thing and how do we weave in the message we want. But we've even done, when we were launching our flavored sparkling water for the first time, that was a big deal for us. It was like, hey, it's this innovation. For the first time, we're not doing just standard water. And so we sat down, we're like, let's get an agency, let's write a brief. This is important. Let's hire somebody to help us out because this feels important. And we sat down to write a brief, and there are 3 of us doing it. And within the first 15, 20 minutes, we kind of naturally just started spitballing ideas and ended up laughing about some idea. And then we all looked at each other and were like, should we just do that instead? Like, should we just save ourselves months of development and, tens of thousands of dollars and just do this idea that we're all sitting here laughing about? So we just said, yeah. And so from that, we developed this taste test idea that was really successful. And we basically made we put our drinks up against the most expensive but disgusting flavors in the world. So it was like, mango chainsaw versus Spanish squid ink or beluga caviar. And so we beat these liquids that cost $60 or $600 compared to our $1.99 can. And it was widely successful and it helped launch it. But again, that was just from us trying to write a brief and then accidentally writing the campaign instead.
I think an agency died when you did that out there in the world. They were expecting that call and they never got the call.
I know, yeah.
Sad. Oh, well. Luckily, that's not our business. Anyway, I have to wrap this up because these people have to get home and you're on LA time. We're not, when we're Minnesota, we go to bed at like 8 or something.
I'm from Michigan, so don't give me any California crap. I'm from Midwest.
Oh, California crap. That backdrop is annoying. Anyway, and very nice to meet your wife in the background too. That was great.
Yep.
That was lovely. Okay, so you have survived another Think and Link, and hopefully you got some amazing insights out of this. I certainly did. I hope each of you also, Andy and Omar, had a really nice connection. We like to see that we have past guests and past speakers who are showing up to these. That's always a good sign. We've got 2 at least out there. It's always a wonderful sign. So you guys can always show up, hang out, talk to other people in the future. And Andy, of course, if you're in town, you should stop by. It's a cool space. You can only see this little bit of it, but it's actually a very cool space.
We got drinks.
I know, we got drinks. We got Liquid Death and we got Surly. And it's an old brewery, which kind of fits, right? We've all disrupted the old breweries. Anyway, so thank you both. This is a wonderful experience. Hopefully you got something out of it. And thank you, Kitty, for helping facilitate this wonderful conversation. And thank you all for coming. Next month, we have on the stage Blue Zone's Dan Buettner, which is going to be a big freaking deal. I know he's like a Netflix celebrity and whatnot. There might not be as much swearing as there was in this one. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe.
I didn't hear a lot of swearing.
There really wasn't that much. I thought there'd be more,
than I
honestly.
expected.
Actually, it's the audience actually. did some.
Disappointing.
Fucking disappointing.
Andy. Anyway, thank you both. This was amazing. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next month.